Let's let people kind of move in and out. So hi, my name is Paula Long. I've been doing data for the last 30 years, so I'm dating myself. Data's gotten cool recently. I mean, it's been around forever. It's been under attack forever. It's given value to businesses forever. But we're now learning how to harness it, and we're learning how to monetize, how to destroy it. We used to have problems with data where it could get malware, it could get destroyed, but nobody was actually being able to benefit or make a revenue stream out of that. What makes ransomware interesting is, we're really good at monetizing things these days, and people have figured out how to monetize basically malware. So I want to talk through what that is, but I'm going to talk about it from the point of view of data, which is a very different point of view when you start to think about sort of the whole ransomware experience. So let's get started. Let's get started. Okay, let's get started. Good. So how many people know what ransomware is? All right, we'll spend a couple of things. Then I'm going to talk to you about why you care, because if you don't care, you probably want to get up and go. How to prevent it, which is kind of like trying to prevent, the wind and the stars and the sea. You can make it, you can obfuscate it, you can learn to live with it. I'm not sure you can prevent it. And then, most importantly, if it happens, what do you do to recover? So, what is ransomware? Who here has caused ransomware before? All right, I've been doing data for 30 years, right? How many people multitask? You're reading email, you're listening to voicemail, you're late for a meeting, right? Anybody live that life? I live that life. So I get an email, and I'm totally rationalizing, but everybody who's caused it has a story and they rationalize it. So I get an email, it's a WAV file, it's from our voicemail system, I won't tell you the firm for that. I click on it, and it just has this staticky thing, and a lot of people who leave voicemail hang up. And then I run to another meeting. And then I hear this stuff while I'm in this other meeting. Oh my God, the marketing share, nobody can get to the marketing data. Our finance applications start dying. And things just start to permutate. Now this is in 2013 when ransomware wasn't that popular. And I'm like, oh, there's probably just something wrong with our internet connection or the storage array. And then I come out and they say, who did it? And we're all kind of staring at each other trying to figure out who did it, right? So what happened was every file I had access to, which was the entire company because I'm the CEO, which was stupid because I can't be trusted, got encrypted. Because, right, I had everything mounted because why would I want to have to go mount on demand? I just want access to everything. So I took out everything in an hour. These guys were good. The encryption algorithms were good, right? So I get back to my office and I'm saying, who's the idiot who took out our data? And then I'm like, anybody sing the song, I'm looking at the man in the mirror? That person was me, right? And how did I know? I went to click on something, and I got this ransomware note. Now, in 2013, I didn't even know what the hell a Bitcoin was, but they wanted 500 of them, right? I had no idea how to buy it, but our company data was being held hostage. We had just had a kidnapping event. We decided to pay. Luckily, one of the guys who worked for us had been mining Bitcoin. I didn't even know he was doing that. It was kind of interesting. So we paid and we got the data back. How many people think that's where it ended? That is not where it ended. They left. Ransomware people are not clean. They left a bunch of trash files hanging around. They left the old stuff hanging around. They had unencrypted it. But by the time we were done, how many people use file sync and share? Dropbox, Box. Back then, I had managed to sync all my data up to Dropbox, encrypted. It was a beautiful thing. So I had to recover because I was syncing it to all my devices at home as well. So basically, what ransomware does, depending on what kind of breath you have, can take all of your data hostage. You can pay the ransom, and then life still has complications that you got to fix. Make sense? So you can say if you hit it, that data experts have had it happen to them as well. Now, when I went back and read the email header, which how many people open the email header and look at all the mail to? Nobody, right? Now I do when I have an attachment that I don't know who it's from. So it can happen to you. It will take out all your data. I did it. Why do you care? Well, it happens to consumers. I live in fear of my mother getting it because she's 80, 89. So I can imagine being on the phone saying, Mom, do this, or Mom, here's how you do something with a Bitcoin. That's just not going to go well from a consumer perspective. So we've got stuff for her. But it's more and more happening in commercial environments, and you're seeing it all over the press with hospitals, high-value data. So you need to care because it could take out your company. And it can happen on any device, right? It can go across. Windows is the most suspect, but it can happen on an Android. It can happen in Linux. So don't think you're immune. And your data is important to you, whether it's a company or personal. So you care, because you're living with your contact lists, your student papers, your financial reports. That could all be held hostage. And so what does it mean to your company? Well, obviously I have the embarrassment factor, and now I just broadcasted it all over the web that I'm an idiot, but that I cause it. So there's the embarrassment factor. But companies can go out of business if they lose data. And if you're a transit system or a train system that happened in California, you're not able to collect fares, right? Everything was free for a while. You lost revenue. If you're a hospital and these are images, you're not able to do operations. This is a big deal. This is a very big deal. So don't assume that it's just happening to consumers. It's happening to companies all the time, and it's getting into the primary infrastructure. So what do? So you patch. Patch, 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 patch. Lots of people are getting ransomware where the fix was already available. They didn't put it down. Now, everybody, I'm not an IT or a DevOps guy, but I only patch about a week after it comes out because I go Google patches to make sure whatever I'm about to put down doesn't make my life worse, right? So I'm updating, keeping things current, making sure you avoid everything that could happen. Train your users, but what are you going to train them for? There's stupid stuff like a long time ago there was a virus email that said, I love you, and a bunch of guys clicked on it. Most girls didn't click on it because somebody sends you mail, they love you, they know there's not. They know there's something up, right? But now they're just much more subtle. You couldn't tell a ransomware note potentially. You can say if it looks weird, like my husband showed me an email last night. It came from Apple. We buy stuff from Apple. Luckily, he read it, and the return address wasn't ours. It was someone else's return address. So he didn't click on it, but it was basically an invoice for something we bought. He didn't remember buying anything, but we share an account, right? So this could happen to you. So train users to look for things in data. If it doesn't all add up, it's probably not right. And then just sort of adapt your world. So you know how TSA, if you don't have pre-check, you got to take your shoes off. You have to put your computer in a bag. I mean, it's not a bad thing because we're trying to stop people from blowing other people up. So you might want to have your IT guys change the rules around what happens when you get something in email. Never let anything execute out of email, for example. Never. Never let things with a hidden, turn off hidden extensions. I know it's a little ugly when you're looking at stuff, on your Mac or your PC or even your iPad where you see the extension, but don't let the extension be hidden because you can bury that, and then you start running things that you thought was one thing and turned out to be another. And then you got to restrict access. You got to airlock your primary assets. There's tons of backup blogs and communities where actually the backup got attacked. But there was no reason I should have been able to access some of the data that I could. Right? There was no reason I needed to. There was no reason somebody could get to an imaging system without some level of protection. Right? So you got to start to airlock things so that it'll be a little less convenient, but you'll be a little safer. The next thing you want to do is partition, 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 which is basically just saying who gets access to what. And that's inconvenient, but it might be get ransomware and you'll learn inconvenience. And then get some help, get some tools, make sure you keep them current, make sure you turn them on, make sure you don't buy something that's worse than the threat that you get, because some of these things can bring your infrastructure to their knees from a performance perspective. Okay, so now it happened to us. We got ransomware. We did everything possible, like on the last slide, to make sure it didn't happen. Now it happened. How do we recover? So this is a crime scene. It's kind of cool. Data is usually really boring, but this is kind of cool, right? We have villains who bought their stuff on the dark web. They didn't even have to code it. They probably paid $50 for how to be a ransomware expert thing, right? And then they probably just went ahead and started distributing it. So we got villains. We got detectives, which are the guys doing security, right? We got the parents of the data, which are the owners. And then we got the data that was kidnapped. So I viewed kidnapped data as the victim, right? And so your data's been kidnapped. It's been encrypted, so it's been tortured. It hasn't had a really good time. And now you're trying to figure out how do you get it back to normal. So let's talk about that. But ransomware is a crime. It's a low-cost crime to get into. And the ROI is, if you don't mind jail time if you get caught, the ROI is pretty good. If you do mind jail time, I wouldn't advise it, and I really wouldn't advise it anyway, but it's not a hard profession to get into. So what happens when you get infected? The first thing you want to do is start shutting things down, right? Shut down the user. But how many people manage or live with data in an infrastructure environment? We've automated the heck out of everything for data movement. So when you get infected, you've got an incident. When your backups kick in, your DR replication, your copy data management, your file sync and share, you took that incident and you made it an epidemic because that data flowed everywhere. So your house has a kill switch for water if you got a leak. Your data needs a kill switch. So when this stuff starts happening, you can stop it from propagating the places where you want to get it back from. That's really important. You need to understand your data flows, and you need to understand where your kill switch is going to be so that if something happens and it was widespread and you haven't figured out who did it, you can stop the data from moving. Make sense? The next thing you want to do is to pay or not to pay. And this is a really hard decision, right? Because on one hand, you want these guys to go out of business, and the best way to go out of business is have no consumers, right? The second thing is you need your data back, and you need it back now. So you got to think about both of those prescriptions as you start thinking about it. And I say you should be doing a dual path. Somebody asked me before, should we have some Bitcoin on hand? I said, not sure I'd go that far, but I'd know how to buy it. So pay the ransom, decrypt the files, hope it works, move on, right? Not that easy. If it hits common infrastructure, not that easy at all. Because the next thing people are going to tell you to do is restore from backup. Now, I have this saying, I say, with panic comes clarity. When you're in a panic, you're focused on exactly what you have to do. And so now you got to figure out what was impacted. So people tell you, so the security team will tell you, we stopped ransomware, we're awesome, right? And then they'll say, just recover from backup. And then the poor IT guy is going to say, recover what? I have 400 VMs, 2,000 applications, what got hit? Because you won't know everything that got hit right away. You'll say, well, who had it and what they have access to? Not my problem, right? So you want to kind of know where it started and what they touched. You don't want to just restore from backup because you don't know what to restore potentially. And you could actually be restoring stuff that's already got problems itself. So understanding your data flow and understanding who caused the problem and what they did is really important. Believe it or not, if you're in a larger company, your compliance team probably knows this. I don't know if IT and compliance teams talk a lot, but compliance teams usually know what every user has access to, and also can know, depending on what kind of audit level stuff they're running, what they touched. That's gold, absolute gold, if you're trying to recover. Make sense? Nobody uses that, but you should. So here's back to I love the Apollo 13 quote, where basically Jan Krantz is trying to figure out what happened to Apollo 13, and he said, let's look at this from the point of view of status. Is there anything good on this thing? When you're trying to recover from ransomware and it hit the infrastructure, that's what's happening. People are trying to understand what got hit and what they got and how they're going to get back. So again, determine exposure. Get tools that help you determine exposure. That is the most important thing. Because if you know what got hit, you can clean it up surgically. If you don't, you're kind of driving blind. Now, lots of people say, well, just take lots of backups. Well, the more backups you take, the less obvious it is which one to restore from, which is probably okay, but the more likely that some of your backups were infected as well. So you do want to take backups. I'm not saying don't, but I'm saying a blind restore of a backup is sanctioned data loss, because you're going back in time and then rolling forward, having no idea what changed, right? So you've lost data, and you don't know what you've lost. And you don't know whether you just reinfected yourself. So you want to be careful there. Ransomware comes in a bunch of forms. The one that's the ugliest is the one that writes in place, because you can't really tell. The ones that delete, not so bad, because you can find the deleted files. The ones that move things around, not so bad. The ones where they write in place, it's hard to know whether those were sanctioned writes or not sanctioned writes, so the restore is harder. Again, don't get yourself into sanctioned data loss. Your data has been traumatized. It's data in a blender, right? Take an ice cube that's your data, drop it in a blender, watch it crystallize. Now your job is to put it back together again. So understand the value of the data, what your regulatory concerns are in losing the data, the SLAs for getting the data back. Ransomware is a disaster recovery, a disaster, and your team should have a disaster recovery plan. Again, no easy button, right? As soon as it hits the infrastructure, you've got to be thinking about what to do and how to do it. Yeah, back to restore from backup. You're gonna restore from backup if you don't pay, but make sure you do it smart, right? Make sure you took that ice cube, and when you tried to put it back together again, which isn't going to happen, you're careful that when you piece it together again, it looks like a shape of an ice cube. Probably not a great analogy. But think about it in terms of someone who's just been kidnapped and returned. They probably have PTSD, and so you want to make sure your data is good. You want to make sure it's in the right place. You want to make sure there's not a lot of stuff hanging around this residual problems. After you fix the primary, what people don't tell you about is possible that your backup data got wrecked at the same time. And most backup data is read-only, so fixing that's a problem. So you need to understand what happened to your backups so that when you do another restore, you don't live Groundhog's Day. And there's my Groundhog's Day. I love that movie. I just want to pick the day I'm going to relive. And you don't want to relive the day you're recovering from ransomware. And you don't want to leave your backups infected, because you're going to forget. You're going to forget that you had problems in the past. It's going to be amnesia. And then you're going to restore, and you're going to relive that day in glowing color. The miss. It can happen to anyone. It can happen to anywhere. It's not file extension based. They're going after high value targets so they can charge you more money. If you actually looked at the growth curve for ransomware, what you'll see is it's really kind of good. I wish I could show my board, what their TCV is or ACV is, because you're watching, they're going for higher value targets, they're charging more money. Some of them will negotiate. Some of them actually have good help desks. It's not a bad business, but you want to very much be careful that you don't assume that if I don't have this type of data, it won't happen to me. It can happen to any data, anywhere, anytime. And so, what do you want to do when you get back to the office? Well, hopefully, what you'll do is be a little more careful about kind of what you're interacting with when you're doing data. You'll be a little more careful about what you give yourself access to, and you'll talk to your IT teams about doing the same thing. And what really, really, really you want to do is you want to have a plan before it happens. You want to treat ransomware like a disaster. Your IT team should have a disaster recovery plan for ransomware and how they're going to get back if it hits. Because it's a whole lot more likely that you're going to get ransomware than you're going to get hit by, your data center is going to get hit by lightning. It's way more likely that a human error, such as what ransomware triggers off of, is going to happen to you. So what you really, really want to think about is, how do I get back? How do I do it cleanly? How do I stop the criminals, get the guys who stopped the problem for me and shut down the app, to work with the people who have to recover? Because someone stops it, but then someone has to recover. Now, if you decide to pay, there's no guarantee you're going to get your data back, right? These guys aren't the best coders in the world. They're not the cleanest coders in the world. Okay, so with that, I'm done. I thank everybody. So ransomware can happen to you. It did happen to me. It's not fun. So be careful. Thank you.